Most people think the night shift is peaceful. Quiet hallways, empty buildings, no one around. But for those who work alone after midnight, the silence hides things you don't want to hear. From haunted schools to abandoned offices and a hospital that refuses to rest. These are three disturbing true janitor horror stories that prove sometimes the things we clean up don't stay gone for long. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. I used to work as a night janitor at a small town high school in northern Indiana. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and let me work in peace. I'd always preferred the quiet of night over the noise of day, until that job made me rethink the meaning of silence. The school was old, built in the late 1950s, back when asbestos and bad wiring weren't exactly concerns. The hallways were lined with faded lockers, some still decorated with stickers from the previous decade. Every step echoed down the corridors, making you feel like you weren't alone even when you were. My shift started at 10 p.m. By then, the place was empty. The teachers were gone, the lights dimmed to half power, and the security system beeped lazily in the background. I usually began in the cafeteria and worked my way toward the classrooms, ending the night in the basement level, where the maintenance rooms and old storage were kept. That basement always gave me a bad feeling, not because of the smell of mildew or the creaking pipes, but because of that door. There was a heavy metal door at the very end of the hallway, painted a dull gray. It had no sign, no label, just a single old padlock that hung from the latch. I was told it led to a disused storage room. The previous janitor, a guy named Earl, told me on my first week, "Don't worry about that one. It's been locked for years. They lost the key anyway." At first, I didn't question it. Schools have locked doors all the time. But after a few weeks on the job, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. The knocking was the first thing. It was faint, a slow, rhythmic tapping that came from the other side of that door. At first, I thought it was the building settling or maybe a loose pipe, but it happened too regularly, always around 2:15 a.m. and always in threes. Knock, knock, knock. The sound would echo down the corridor, bouncing off the concrete walls. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was nothing. But one night, curiosity got the better of me. It was a Tuesday night. Dead quiet. Snow falling outside. The kind of night that muffles everything. I was mopping the hall outside the science labs when I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. My mop water rippled, disturbed by the faint vibration through the floor. This time, it sounded closer, like someone was pressing their ear against the metal from the other side. I set my mop down and slowly walked toward the door. The fluorescent light above me flickered, humming with that low electrical buzz that fills the silence. The closer I got, the colder it felt. My breath began to fog slightly. Not freezing, but just enough to notice. I stood in front of the door, listening, nothing. Then, knock, knock, knock. This time it came louder, deliberate. I felt my pulse in my ears. My brain screamed at me to turn around, but something made me reach for the handle. It was cold, almost icy. The padlock was still there, rusted and heavy. I tugged at it gently. It didn't budge. So I leaned close and whispered, "Hello?" Silence. I let out a shaky laugh, more to calm myself than anything, and turned to leave. That's when I heard it. A low whisper, muffled but unmistakable. "Help!" I spun back around so fast I nearly slipped on the wet floor. It came again, faint but clear this time. "Please, help!" I backed away slowly, heart pounding, until I was halfway down the hall. Then I grabbed my mop bucket and left that basement for the rest of the night, talking to Earl. The next morning, I cornered Earl, the retired janitor, in the parking lot. He'd been stopping by to pick up his pension check and usually liked to chat. When I told him what I'd heard, the color drained from his face. He didn't even try to laugh it off. He looked down at the ground and said, "You heard the basement door, didn't you?" I nodded. He sighed, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "They told you it's a storage room, right?" "That's half true. It used to be part of the old boiler system. Back in the 70s, there was a kid, a sophomore I think, got stuck down there during a fire drill. Boiler malfunctioned and, well, they didn't find him till the next morning." I felt sick. "They never sealed it off?" "They did. After that, the school closed off the lower section and welded it shut. But sometimes..." He exhaled a stream of smoke. "You can still hear him knocking, asking for someone to let him out." He must have seen my face because he added quickly, "Look, just ignore it. It doesn't hurt anyone. It's just echoes." But the way his voice cracked told me he didn't believe that either. For a few nights, I tried to brush it off. I played music through my earbuds while I worked. I avoided that hallway until the very end of my shift. And it worked. For a while. Until one night in late February. A blizzard had hit hard, and the power went out around midnight. The backup lights kicked in. Dim red emergency lamps that made the whole school look like a scene from a horror movie. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check the breaker room, which unfortunately was in the basement. As I descended the stairs, the air grew thick and damp. My boots squeaked on the concrete. The only sound was the distant hum of the emergency generator. When I reached the bottom, the first thing I noticed was that the padlock was gone. The latch on the basement door hung open. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I scanned the floor. No sign of the lock. Just wet footprints leading out from the door and stopping halfway down the hallway. They were small, like a teenager's. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. I followed the prints cautiously until they just ended, right in the middle of the hallway. The last one smeared, as if whoever made them had been dragged backward. I turned around and shined the light at the door again, and froze. It was slightly open now, just a few inches, enough to see darkness beyond. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I stepped forward, shining my light into the gap. For a split second, I thought I saw movement, like a shadow shifting just out of view. Then the door slammed shut with a metallic bang that echoed through the entire basement. I bolted up the stairs, 2 at a time, and didn't go back down that night. The next morning, I told the principal about it. She was skeptical, but agreed to let the security officer check the cameras. There was one camera that faced the basement hallway. I stood behind the officer as he scrubbed through the footage. Around 2:18 a.m., the time I was down there, the feed flickered. For 2 seconds, the screen turned black. Then it came back, showing the door swinging open slowly by itself. A few seconds later, it slammed shut. But before it did, in the brief moment the door was open, a figure could be seen standing just inside the threshold. Small humanoid, and pale, almost translucent. The officer paused the frame. "Could be dust," he muttered, but his voice was thin. I knew what I saw, and it wasn't dust. I should have quit. Every instinct told me to walk away, but I needed the paycheck, and I convinced myself it was just some electrical glitch. Until my last night. It was early March. The air outside smelled like thawing snow and rot. I was finishing up my rounds when I noticed something strange on the floor by the stairwell, a trail of soot leading down to the basement. It looked like something had been dragged. The streaks were smudged uneven, like the shape of a handprint repeating down the steps. My whole body went cold. I followed them, against every sane thought I had, until I reached the bottom. The basement door stood wide open. Inside, it was pitch black. My flashlight barely pierced the darkness. The smell hit me first. Burnt dust and something else, like old smoke trapped for decades. I took a single step inside. My light landed on a set of old boiler pipes, rusted and broken. The walls were scorched in patches, and in the middle of the floor lay the old padlock. It was open, twisted, and blackened, like it had been through a fire. Then I heard it, breathing, shallow, right behind me. I turned slowly, and there he was. A boy, maybe 15, wearing a tattered school uniform from another era. His skin was pale, cracked like dried ash. His eyes, hollow, yet filled with something that looked like pain. He whispered, "You unlocked it." Before I could react, the door behind me slammed shut, plunging the room into total darkness. I screamed and swung my flashlight around, but the beam went dead. My ears filled with the sound of knocking, loud and frantic, coming from every wall at once. I stumbled backward, clawing at the door, yelling for help. Then, silence. The lights flickered back on. The door was open. The boy was gone, but in the soot on the floor, where he'd been standing, were words written in uneven strokes. "Thank you." I ran out and never went back. 2 days later, the school called to ask if I'd left any tools in the basement. The new maintenance man said they found the door welded shut again, this time from the inside. When they tried to open it, the metal was hot to the touch, like someone had just been burning something behind it. They sealed the area permanently after that. A month later, I heard from Earl again. He said the knocking had stopped for good. Then he paused and added, almost to himself, maybe he finally found his way out. I still dream about that boy sometimes. The hollow look in his eyes, the ash on his hands. And every now and then, when I hear pipes knocking in the walls of my new job, I can't help but wonder, what if some doors aren't meant to stay closed, because someone's still waiting on the other side? I used to work as a night janitor for a downtown office building in Chicago. It wasn't one of those fancy skyscrapers you see in movies. Just a 12-story structure from the 1970s. Gray concrete exterior, long fluorescent lit hallways, and a constant smell of printer toner and coffee. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. By the time I arrived, the day staff had gone home, and the building was silent except for the hum of air conditioners and the occasional creak of old pipes. The cleaning crew consisted of 3 people: me, my co-worker Luis, and our supervisor Nancy. Nancy stayed on the lower floors. Luis handled the upper ones, and I was responsible for floors 4 through 7. It was easy money, until I started noticing strange things happening on the 5th floor. The 5th floor was mostly offices for a marketing company that had rented the space for over a decade. Cubicles everywhere, glass conference rooms, motivational posters on the walls. Success starts with you kind of stuff, but it always felt off. Even with the lights on, it felt darker than the other floors, like something about the air itself was heavier. One night, about 2 weeks into the job, I was emptying trash bins near the main conference room when I heard a sound. A faint clicking, like a computer mouse. I froze, looking around. Every computer should have been off by that hour. I walked slowly between the cubicles, listening. Click, 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 then it stopped. I checked every desk. All screens were dark. No monitors glowed. No fans hummed. The whole place was dead quiet again. I told myself it was probably just the old building settling. But then I noticed something else. A mug on one of the desks. It was still steaming. I checked the time. 2:41 a.m. Nobody else was supposed to be there. A few nights later, I was cleaning the 5th floor bathrooms when I heard a ding from the hallway. The elevator. I poked my head out. The elevator doors were open, but no one was inside. Still, the sensor light on the elevator panel flickered like it had just been used. That's when the motion lights on the far side of the hallway came on. One by one, like someone was walking down the corridor even though it was empty. My skin prickled. I turned off my mop light and stood perfectly still. The lights continued activating, closer, 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 until they reached the door of the conference room. Then they stopped. I should have gone downstairs, but curiosity got the better of me. I walked toward the conference room, my footsteps echoing on the tiles. When I got close, I noticed that the door was open about an inch. The light inside was flickering. I pushed it open. The conference room table was surrounded by empty chairs. But one of them, the one at the head of the table, was pulled back, facing the door, like someone had been sitting there moments ago. A coffee mug sat in front of it, the same one I had seen before, still steaming. I felt my throat go dry. I whispered, "Hello?" And then, from the opposite side of the glass wall, I saw a reflection, a woman, standing in the far corner of the room, motionless, her head tilted slightly to the side. But when I turned around, no one was there. The next morning, I told Luis what happened. He laughed at first, but then said quietly, "You're not the first one to see her." I frowned. "Who?" "The woman on the 5th floor. They say she used to work for the marketing company. Stayed late one night to finish a project, never made it home. Heart attack or stroke. No one really knows. They found her at her desk the next morning, coffee still hot." I didn't believe him. Not entirely. It sounded like a typical urban legend office story. Still, I couldn't shake the image of her reflection. A week later, I was alone again on the 5th floor, mopping near the break room. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Nancy calling. When I answered, all I heard was whispering. "Hello, Nancy?" The whispering grew louder. Dozens of overlapping voices, some distant, some close. I couldn't make out any words, but it felt like they were all talking about me. Then, clear as day, a woman's voice came through the static. "Don't clean this floor again." The call ended abruptly. When I checked the call log, it didn't show any incoming call at all. That's when I noticed something. The break room door behind me had closed. I hadn't touched it. The next day, I went to the building's security office to ask if anyone had been working late on the 5th floor. The guard on duty, a guy named Marvin, said no. The cameras hadn't picked up any activity. I asked to see the footage from the previous night anyway. We fast-forwarded through hours of nothing. Just an empty hallway. But at 2:43 a.m., the motion sensor outside the conference room activated. The light flickered on. The door opened slowly, but the feed didn't show anyone opening it. Then faintly, just for a few frames, a shape appeared. A woman in office clothes, her face blurred, standing by the table. Then the footage cut out, static for 2 seconds, and came back with the door closed. Marvin swore under his breath and leaned back. Happens every few months, he said. Camera glitches on that floor. The company never fixed it, but his tone didn't sound like he believed his own words. The next Friday, Luis called in sick. That meant I had to clean floors 4 through 7 alone. I started with 6, trying to avoid the 5th as long as I could, but around 2 a.m., I forced myself down. The elevator doors opened onto the 5th floor, completely dark. I turned on my flashlight and stepped out. Everything was silent. No machines humming, no vents blowing, dead quiet. I started vacuuming, trying to distract myself, but halfway through, the vacuum suddenly shut off. I pressed the switch. Nothing. The lights in the hallway flickered once, twice. Then every light went out. Total darkness. I turned off my vacuum and listened. For a moment, I thought I heard breathing. Faint, slow, right behind me. Then a woman's voice. "Why are you here?" I spun around, shining my flashlight wildly. The beam landed on a reflection in the conference room glass. She was standing there again, pale, expressionless, in a white blouse, watching me. I ran for the elevator. When I hit the button, nothing happened. The panel was dead. But then, the doors dinged and opened by themselves. The elevator was pitch black inside. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing inside, a faint silhouette unmoving. I backed away slowly, pressing myself against the wall. The doors slid shut again with a soft hiss. Then all the lights came back on. I didn't finish the rest of my shift. The voice recording, I told Nancy what happened the next day, and she rolled her eyes. "You're scaring yourself," she said. "Buildings make noises. Lights flicker. It's old wiring." I didn't argue. But before I left, I placed a voice recorder on one of the cubicle desks, just to prove something weird was happening. I came back the next morning to pick it up. When I played the recording later, most of it was silence, just the hum of the air system and faint background noise. Then, at 2:39 a.m., there was a soft knock, 3 times. And then, a woman's voice. "He's still here." Another voice, deeper this time, whispering, "Don't let him leave." Then the sound of the conference room chair scraping back across the floor. The recording ended there. I deleted it immediately. I didn't want proof anymore. The following week, Nancy quit without notice. Luis transferred to another site. That left me alone. The new supervisor, Tom, asked me to finish one final night to close out the contract with the building owners. After that, we were done with that site. That night, as I was packing my cleaning cart, I decided to do something stupid. Go back to the 5th floor one last time. The elevator felt slower than usual, the numbers blinking lazily as it climbed. When the doors opened, I stepped into silence. Every desk was covered in dust. The company had moved out days ago. Chairs were stacked, computers removed. The entire floor was empty, except for the conference room door. It was wide open, lights on. I took a deep breath and walked inside. The table was bare. No papers, no chairs, nothing. But sitting in the middle was that same coffee mug, steam rising. I turned around to leave, but the door swung shut on its own. The air turned cold. My breath fogged in front of me. Then I heard her, the woman's voice inches from my ear. "You stayed too long." I turned, flashlight trembling, and there she was. Her eyes were pale, skin grayish, veins like thin blue cracks beneath her face. She wasn't floating or vanishing. She was solid, real, like someone standing right there. She tilted her head just like before. "He's still here," she whispered again. I stumbled back, tripping over the chair leg. My flashlight hit the table and rolled, beam spinning across the walls. And for a second, it caught another figure standing in the corner. A man this time, half in shadow, his neck bent at an unnatural angle, face burned and twisted like melted plastic. He moved toward her. She turned and smiled faintly, almost relieved. The lights flickered violently. The air pressure dropped. Then, both of them vanished. The room went dark. I don't remember running. I just remember hitting the stairwell door and bursting outside into the freezing night. The building was sold 2 months later and renovated into startup offices. They replaced all the wiring, repainted everything, even sealed off the old conference room area to make space for a lounge. A few weeks ago, out of curiosity, I looked the place up on Google Maps. There was a new photo of the 5th floor, bright, modern, filled with plants and laptops, but in the reflection of the glass wall, behind a group of smiling workers, you can just make out 2 faint figures standing near the corner table. A woman in white, and a man beside her, both watching.